Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Um, it's that magical time of the year again where I get to go to Tucson and shop till I drop for beads and all kinds of fun stuff. They have the largest trade show in the world where jewelry making is concerned, and it is such a fun time. I get to be with my industry friends, and we get to nerd out over something that we're all very passionate about. And so, whenever we were developing this project, this is, by the way, by Danielle Wicks, and I'm teaching it on her behalf. But I was like looking at it, and I was like, this is really the spirit of the Southwest that I'm trying to like get into the mindset of before I go meet my friends and do all the shopping and stuff. And so, this project was just like the perfect fit for this week. Um, I'm going to be teaching you several different things, but before we get started, I want you guys to do a favor for me. Make sure you hit that like button for this video, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. It is important for the channel, and it helps just get the word out that Silver Silk is doing all these fan and excuse me, all this fun and fabulous. I tried to combine those words, didn't quite work. Fun and fabulous tutorials, and that folks out there are able to, come over into the Silver Silk land because of it. And then I want you to subscribe to the channel, and that'll just let YouTube know that this channel is important. And the other thing that I wanted to let you guys know is that any of the materials that I talk about and the tools and some light instructions can be found in the video description below. There is also a link to the blog over on the Silver Silk and More website, which you can find at silversilkonline.com. And that blog basically will give you the written instructions. And then also, if you check out the PDF pattern part of our website, you can download the instructions and the full pattern chart and everything. So we've got the full package, which is pretty exciting because education is very important. It's the foundation of this business. And we're trying to make designs easy for you guys to make. So with this project, I'm going to teach you how to do a 2-drop peyote stitch, which just works up so fabulously and so quickly. And then we're going to work with different types of materials to make sort of a mixed media design. And I'm going to show you how to use the slide clasp to kind of bring it all together. So let me show you the design as I flip my camera around to my workspace, and we will just get right into it. You guys, we're calling this design Memories of Tucson. Now, how could you not love this design for all those beautiful little cactuses? It is such a quirky, fun, just expensive looking bracelet, right? You've got those beautiful silver silk findings on it, and then you've got all of these different materials and textures that just work so well together. So I'm excited to just show you guys how to use this. We will be doing a focus on um, the actual like construction of the design as opposed to this peyote stitch. I don't think there would be enough hours currently to finish the entire peyote stitch bracelet. So luckily with some TV magic, we've sort of done that prep work ahead of time. But we will definitely talk through a lot of tips and tricks of how to put it together. Here is the bracelet in real life. And let me flip it around so the cactus looks correct. Isn't that just dynamic? The eye, it kind of looks like a rug when you take it out, like a cat rug almost. But whenever you look at it up close, you got the beautiful cactus pattern and those amazing little drucks and the silver silk, and it is just a wow factor bracelet. Memories of Tucson. So let's talk about supplies that you'll need for this design. First, we've got some silver silk capture chain. This one is in the colorway called Fall, which is a gold colored ball chain that has antique copper knitted around it. It takes 6 needles and a strand of wire that's as thin as human hair that is stitched essentially around and drawn over a ball chain core, and it's great because you can see that ball chain really clearly through those knits. It's very soft, very supple, does not feel like wire at all, in fact, and you can cut it without it fraying, and so it's pretty magical stuff. But you'll need give or take about 7 inches, and we say 7 inch loosely. If you're making it for your own wrist, probably going to be adjusted to your wrist size. For me, I prefer tighter bracelets, to be honest. But in this case, I won't be making it for myself. It's going to be more of a general size. And so having it at the 6.5 to 7 inch mark is going to be probably the best and safest measurement. So have some of that out. Next, we have our 20 millimeter slide crimps. That's these guys right here. It's got my SilverSilk stamp on it, which basically means that you've got that 5-layer plating technology. So these aren't going to tarnish or turn color over time. And it comes in 6 different colors, including gold, which I've got here to work with. Um, and they're just fantastic, fantastic sliders. And especially if you're trying to make a multi-strand bracelet on the go. So I got a couple of those. Let's see, we'll need a lobster claw clasp and a jump ring or 6 in this case. So let me grab those real quick. We've got a couple of jump rings sitting out there. Now, you can use a lobster claw, or if you're really wanting to be different, you can absolutely go to one of my toggle clasps. There is no right or wrong answer for clasping. It is just truly to your preference. And depending on just whatever you want to switch to, it wouldn't matter if you grabbed it from the store. All of these are plated exactly the same way. All of it's consistent. And so you can kind of pick up to whatever your preference. I personally think that the toggle looks a little more elegant. For a bracelet, I will say they are a little more challenging to put on as opposed to a lobster claw. But that's why you have another human or a tool that you can use, perhaps a paper clip, to help you fasten your bracelet onto you. Either yourself or a friend, I suppose. So have those things out. You will also need a head pin, which I went ahead and made a little bobble because that's what the head pin is used for. And it's also done in the same plating technology. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is with my findings, because I've got such a huge assortment of it now over on silversilkonline.com, you can have consistent color across the board with all of your findings. Sometimes, depending on where you pick stuff up, it tends to be like a little bit of a darker metal or a warmer color of a metal, or the metal is brittle. And none of that is an issue with any of my findings. They all have a brass core, so they're all going to be hypoallergenic, plus very, very strong and durable. And again, that 5 layers of plating that's applied on top ensures tarnish resistance. All right. You will also need some beads. We've got this beautiful, what we're calling rattlesnake, which I'm going to flip this around and show you guys the label. It is a a brown tan matte finish with the Picasso. It's a size 10 delica, which means they're just going to be slightly bigger than the average size 11s, which quite frankly is easier on my eyes to bead with. So I'm a huge fan of the size 10 delicas. And I've got a couple different colors. This is going to be the cactus color, and this is going to be the base bracelet color, but they just match so well together. And then with that, you will need some 4-pound test beading wire, or beading thread, which I had out and I think I accidentally put it away. So let me grab that and show you what the packaging looks like. It's this stuff right here. I absolutely dig Fireline. I think that the wiry texture of the thread makes it so much easier to put on your needle, first of all, but also whenever you're working with something that requires pretty consistent tension throughout your design, you really want a thread that's not going to be super free flowy, in my opinion. There's a time and place for free flowing thread. And for me, for that is fringe, which I would not want to use Fireline for because of its wiry technology. Now, because this bracelet tends to be a very robust weave, I would prefer to have something that is pretty much of a robust thread to go with it, and that keeps my tension very even throughout the design. So I recommend the 4-pound test for this design. Now, with that, you're going to need some needles, which I know that's going to scare away a lot of people here, but I would recommend the tulip beading needles in size 11. They are just big enough to thread without any problems, and they're incredibly strong. I think I've got one actually pre-threaded here. You can always get a little threader to help you assist with threading. There are big eye needles that you can absolutely use that work perfectly for size 10 delicas. So all of those are options. I think whatever makes your process easier is really what you want to go to. And make this a fun project. So you will also need some Czech glass beads. These are round trucks. They have a finish to them, and I think it's travertine, but don't quote me on that. I really dig this color. Typically, I'm not a fan of brown beads, but when you pair it with the right formula, I mean, come on. How can you not dig that, right? So I'm enjoying that. The other thing is fine beading wire, which let me see if I can grab some of that. Here we go. So you'll need some fine beading wire, and you can also use medium-sized beading wire. Now, the only real difference is whenever you're going to crimp, with the fine size beading wire, you want to add a little bit more meat in your crimp whenever you're crimping. I'll go over that a little bit more thoroughly whenever we get to that step. But all to say, if you don't have fine beading wire at home, medium is perfectly acceptable. And it really just depends on the size of your beads. I would say for the Drux, either or work pretty beautifully. And finally, you will need some crimp tubes. So let's see, I've got my soft flex crimps here somewhere. There they are. These are 2 millimeter crimps. They're 2 millimeters wide and 2 millimeters long. And you can see that they are of high quality. They've got a very thick crimp wall, and the crimps themselves are seamless. So what that basically ensures is it's going to be a very consistent and very secure crimp whenever you put it through the pliers. Anything with a seam is going to break at the seam, and it's not going to be a very fun crimping process, especially because your design can come apart. You don't have to worry about that with Softlex crimps. They are consistent, they're tarnish resistant, they come in 4 different colors, so you can match it to your design. And so I highly recommend this brand. And with that, let's get cracking on our design. All right, I'm going to show you guys the basis of how to do the 2-drop peyote stitch, because once you learn this, it's A, mind-blowing, and B, um, this sort of sets the foundation of the design, right? You get a very, very good understanding of how this works, and you'll be able to read that pattern that I'm going to show you here in a little bit in no time. I'm going to start by stringing 6 of my rattlesnake size 10 delicas onto my design, or onto my thread, excuse me, to make my design. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to go ahead and slide that right down. Now, some folks prefer to have some sort of a way to secure and anchor their tail thread, which you can absolutely do that. I'm just going to pick up a bead and I'm going to just kind of thread it on this one end. And you can actually use a bead that you'll take out later as a way to anchor your thread, in fact, or you can use a bead stopper, but sometimes those are a little bit clumsy and can get in the way. So maybe just using a bead and then just kind of pushing the thread through a couple times will keep that thread nice and anchored. And you can have this long, nice 6-inch tail to work with and secure your design a little bit later. And it is important to leave at least 6 to 10 inches. You will absolutely need that much for the finishing of this peyote band when we get toward the end. And you'll see why. All right, I'm going to slide all 6 of those down. I'm going to ignore the one that I've used as my anchor and just work with those 6. So whenever you're holding this, it's easiest to hold it from a vertical standpoint so that whatever I'm stringing on next is going to work in a upward direction. And so you can see how I've sort of positioned my fingers to anchor the thread up here, and then I've got my delicas flowing down, and then I've sort of got the rest of my thread wrapped around my middle finger there. And the idea here is to pick up 2 additional delicas. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2 from the bottom, and I'm going to go up through that third one. I'm going to use my thumb to anchor everything, and I'm just going to pull that thread right up. Now, the amount of thread that you want to work with for your peyote stitch is going to be about 65 inches, or a couple yards. And I think that would be sufficient enough to complete the entire band. I'm working with a shorter amount just for the purpose of showing you guys how this Delica situation of making a double drop peyote stitch works. And so you could see that they're starting to stack up onto each other. And so I'm going to sort of switch things around and I'm going to now push my thread up over my my index finger and still keep everything anchored with my thumb. Now, I have done 2 delicas to stack on top of the previous 2. I've passed it through 1, and for my next one, I'm going to actually just do 1 delica. Whoops, hit my camera there. So I'm gonna pick up 1, I'm going to skip 1, and I'm going to go through 2 this time. Now, I realize this is all mind-blowing because it's like, "Why is this a thing?" Well, that's kind of the fun of this, right? It's because of this odd peyote count that is going to create a very easy pattern at the end of it all. Now you could see my anchor bead is still hanging out there. We're just not going to worry about that. And this is how your working swatch will look like as you're sort of continuing to stitch all the rest of your delicas. Now we've got our first and our second row complete. So we're going to go ahead and create a larger swatch. So the way to do this is you keep your design and your anchor bead right at the top. Okay, that positioning never changes. And I think your anchor bead can be a point of orientation on how you're supposed to hold it, or a preferred way, for me at least, recommended for you guys. And so I'm just going to kind of keep a tight rein on everything, and I'm going to pick up 2 size 10 delicas now. So the idea is to stack onto the previous set. So I'm going to go down the 1 bead and then just sort of pull on everything as such. So you can see that they're already starting to stack, which is perfect. And now I just need 1 delica and I'm going to go through 2 of those other 2 delicas. All right. At any point in time you feel that that tension is loose, simply go back through, pull on your beads individually. Remember that fire line is quite robust and a very nice and wiry thread, so it's going to hold everything in place as you work with it. And now you continue your pattern, keeping it positioned exactly the same way. You're going to pick up now 2 delicas and go back up through the opposite direction that you came from. So pick up 2, go through the 1, and you'll notice that the beads pop up, the ones that you're supposed to go through. So you shouldn't really lose your place, as you can kind of clearly see those 2 that are popping up are the ones that I need to go through next. Okay. And you basically just kind of zipper back and forth until you get your pattern swatch started to be stitched in, starting to stitch in all the way around. So hopefully that gives you a very clear understanding of this double drop peyote stitch. And if not, it's important to practice this until you get it, to a point to where it feels like it's stacking correctly. And so what I would recommend doing is that, yes, we've learned it up to this point, but just take a small swatch of thread that you have and practice first. Practice getting the stitch down, practice getting the hang of holding it, and whatever feels comfortable. Because if it doesn't feel comfortable in your hands, the tension on your thread is not going to be very tight. It's not going to stitch up correctly because of how awkward it's being held, or if you have something kind of off. So get used to holding it is, I guess, all I'm saying. Now, if I turn it this direction, which is basically from top to bottom, that is how we are going to read our pattern. So let me flash this graphic over to you guys. You're basically going to start where that red arrow is at the very bottom, which you could see right here, and you're following those lines directly up to stitch that first cactus. Actually, let's see. There's that one and cactus 4. Okay, so I'm missing one cactus. It might think. Let me grab that cactus for you guys real quick. Because we sort of broke it down into 4 different cactus patterns for you guys. There it is. So let's see. Cactus 1, 2, 3. There we are. 1. My order of slides got out of whack here. Whereas I guess this is saying starting from the left side. And so you could even just swap this whole thing around, in fact, and still be on the same side. But that's probably not ideal for this. So in this case, I would say start with cactus 2 and then go to cactus 1 just to make it easier because we did start from this side and we kind of wove in and out until we got to the other side. So um, let me flash each of those graphics again so you guys can take screenshots and continue the pattern. Now, again, I will emphasize that you'll want to check out the video description below because the entirety of this pattern can be found on the blog. And then if you sign up for the free membership for the PDF patterns, you can get a free numeric chart that will tell you the exact pattern of this cactus. Now, thanks to TV Magic, we went ahead and stitched all of this together. So you can see all of these different cactus in action. And again, if you don't want to do the different cactus patterns, you can just repeat the one over and over again, if that's easier. And so what we're doing here at the end that we need to finish up with is once you've got your entire band all finished and stitched together, you'll want to do something that's basically going to climb up an extra step using the ladder stitch. And the reason for that is that these act as a prong for sliding um, into our slide clasp. So you'll definitely need to do that on the other end as well. We went ahead and secured the thread on one side. So I'm going to actually do the ladder stitch on this side for you guys. And I'll show you how to end the thread as well. So also because of TV magic, we went ahead and also put the needle and thread together. So you guys don't have to watch me fumble around with that. And all I'm going to do is, since my thread is exiting that last bead away from all of these stitch beads, I need to go back through to meet myself at those stitched beads. So all I'm going to do is just go back through some of my stitched work here until I get back up to that bead that I need to stitch an extra delica around. So I'll pick up a delica, which I don't have on my table, so give me just a second. Okay. There we go. I'm always afraid if I spill out a few delicas, the entire tube will come down on my table. So I'm trying to like be a little bit more mindful of and slow of how I do that. All right. So I'm going to grab a delica. I'm going to stitch back through that small little delica that's sticking out. Now, here's the thing that I think would be advised is that I would not go through just once, but I would go through twice because you really want that to be strong. Okay, maybe even a third time just to be on the safe side. If that little thread fails, that basically means your entire design is going to come apart. So we don't want that happening. Now I'm going to stitch back through the other beads here and stitch in the 2 that I need to for the next part. Okay, so we're going to ladder stitch all this together now. So we grab 2 delicas, and then you're going to go back through this a few times. Okay, we'll do the magic number of 3 here. Perfect. So there we go. We have now a little slider area for our crimp. And the way to end this is that because it's a bracelet band, it's fairly short and petite and tiny. I am going to just stitch back through the work without knotting it, which might be controversial to some people, but I will say that the more complicated you make the stitching, the less likely it's going to be falling apart. So when you go back through your work, just try and go back through the beads in a order that it's not going to, cause the thread to go all over the place. Try and work into the center of the bracelet and make that thread path as complicated as possible, and you will not see it coming apart. And I would say and advise to go through 1 to 2 inches. Oops. Okay. Again, I am just weaving it into, in and out, making that thread path complicated as much as I can, and ensuring that whenever I trim this, I want to be somewhere in the center of my bracelet so that the thread just kind of disappears and you will never see it ever again. Sort of a format here. There we go. All right, I think I can safely cut this off and not feel bad about it. And I am digging how all that stitched up together. So I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and you can cut this off. And I noticed that I forgot to go over the tools in the beginning of this video, but I will say that again, check out the video links in this video description, and you're gonna get also a video that I made for just going over all the tools and stuff that I use specifically for bead weaving and for jewelry making. All right, so now comes the fun part because basically we get to stuff everything into our slide crimp. So I'm going to grab a slide crimp and I'm going to show you guys a couple tips that I think will make your sliding a lot easier. With your chain nose pliers, go ahead and open up that prong all the way. And what I also want you to do is I want you to go in with your chain nose plier tips and go into the actual crimp and just spread it apart a little bit at the tip here. The reason for that is that wider space makes it easier to slide everything down. All right. And we will go ahead and start with our. Isn't that just beautiful how that just slides right in? It's magical, really. Just start with your peyote strip there. And the next thing I'm going to do is this is like actually this is going to be a very special tip because I want to put in the capture chain, right? The thing is, we've got a little bit of space here for those beads to move around, and it's not fitting into the slider part of it. But we do need to compensate for the um, the space so that our next part of our chain won't kind of overlap and run into it. So in order to do that, what I do is I just grab a couple of the beads and I just stack them right into the slide crimp. And that's going to create a little bit of space that's tucked away. It's hidden. You won't even see it. And it'll prevent my chain and my peyote stitch band from overlapping. The next thing I want to do is just pinch that wire around the last bead of the ball chain. And then, whoops, my beads fell out as I was holding too many things here. I'm going to go ahead and slide that little guy in. Sometimes those wires will want to get caught up into the edge of the slide crimp, but you can kind of get it out. Now, I didn't get that wire all the way in, so I'm going to actually take it out and readjust. You definitely want to pay attention and get this part as correct as possible. Just for the finish of your bracelet needs to be nice and clean. Okay, that's not fitting through. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, it is completely tucked in on either side. So I'm just going to give this a nice little press together just to make sure it's not going to come out later. And my beads are preventing my chain from overlapping. So that's a good sign. This looks really good so far. All right. So actually, even before we get to step 5, we'll need to talk about our beaded strand because I think that's where this is sort of going to. I've got my beaded strand pre-strung, as you can see here. And the one side, I went ahead and made a round crimp using my magical crimpers. Okay, that's these guys right here. And I'm going to show you how to do it on the other side, but I did it on the one side just to show you. And again, this is one of those situations where I need to add in a couple of seed beads to help compensate for that space not overlapping. So we'll drop in a couple, and then we'll just slide our beaded strand in. And it doesn't matter what type of crimp, what color of crimp you use. It's all going to be tucked away inside of this little crimp anyway. So just make sure you guys have all of that nice and tucked in. Give a little like slight closure with the edge of your crimp slider crimp, and then go ahead and fold this down because everything will be adjusted on and fitted into your crimp. So the way to do this is that I kind of slowly turn everything around and then I just press it along the table and all of my stuff should be fitted in pretty well as such. And I've like accommodated for that space because of those seed beads. Now, the part that I wanted to show you is actually how to make that crimp and then how to measure out all of this stuff. So we're at that point now. So now I get to show you how I made that crimp, which all you're going to do is once you've strung your beads on, you're going to string on your crimp and you'll basically go back through the crimp with your wire as such to give it that extra meat within the crimp so that whenever you use your magical crimpers, it's going to make a nice round, like fat crimp, you know? And even before that, make sure to measure twice the length of your beaded band and the length of your bracelet beads here. Because the last thing you want to do is have anything a little bit too short, more so than the other, and it not wrapping correctly around the wrist. So bead everything, get one side crimped, and then sort of measure everything at the end. And once you've got a little bit of, well, once you get the measurement correct, you want to have a little bit of breathing room within your beaded strand, just maybe a millimeter or two of looseness. That way the beads can kind of flow around freely. And then after you do that, you can go ahead and use your magical crimpers and you just press down once. You get this nice little round ravioli shape, and then you kind of just press it around and around again to get a rounded shape, just like this. And that becomes the bead within the slider crimp. And so now we get to do all of those stuffing things all over again with our second side. So as you noticed, I haven't cut my capture chain either. So I'm going to actually measure where it needs to be, just using my fingers. And it looks like about right here is where I need to cut it. And then I need to press it just below that last bead of the ball chain. And then you might get a few of these little wire remnant pieces at the end. Don't worry, your capture chain is not going to fray. It's just sometimes there's a little bit of wire splinters here at the end that you can actually just unplug with your chain nose pliers. And then go ahead and pinch it around that bead of the ball chain. And now you've got a perfect measure for your bracelet. So grab that second slider crimp, do the same stuff all over again. Make sure you open up that prong, open up that space. Okay, and then make sure your logo is, facing up. I think it just has it on the one side and not the other. I prefer to kind of be consistent with my findings and where the logo is appearing. So this way we're going to actually slide it through this direction. Okay, you'll go once with that, grab a couple of seed beads and drop those down. I think I need to grab another one, in fact. Here we go. Okay, then grab your chain. Carefully slide that down. It's going pretty easily so far, which is great. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple more seed beads. There's one. I should say delicate beads. They're not technically they're seed beads, but they're also delicate beads. Anyway, once you get to that point, go ahead and kind of just gently close this together so that it's no longer spread apart. And then gently use your table to press that end of that crimp shut. Okay, there we go. You could even use a hammer and just sort of tap the ends. I think I might do that after the video, in fact, um, just to be like super, super secure, because you still got a little seam there, and that kind of bothers me. And I'd prefer to have it like super seamless like this side. So I'm probably going to just tap a hammer to it, a rubber mallet even that I've got laying around. Isn't that just gorgeous though? Look at that. And the ending just looks so, so perfect and professional. And so now at this point, you can kind of just attach the findings and call it good, which is what I'm about to do. But the slide crimps, they have a very small loop. And if you have purchased findings from my store, these are 1 millimeter size jump rings, meaning that the width of the wire is close to 20 gauge wire, making it very strong and secure, which is great, but it won't fit through these little holes. And so what I do is I just take my beading awl and I gently push it into the loop of my finding until my loop becomes bigger. And that way it'll accommodate for the 1 millimeter jump ring. So a little tip for you there. My findings are exquisite. They're not super perfect, but I will say that they are very strong. And looks like I'll need to go in a little bit more. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to stick on the clasp on one side, and then we'll do a series of jump rings on the other as well. Okay, looks really good, nice and professional. Same thing on this side. We'll just take our beading awl. And I hesitate to use thinner jump rings, especially on bracelets, because it needs to be super strong, in order to really wear. And so I would suggest getting a beading awl if you're going to really use good jump rings with good robust jump rings with these slide clasps. Okay, open up your jump ring. Whoop. Go ahead and slide that through. I'm going to connect a series of about 4 jump rings together. Okay, this one's already nice and closed. So yeah, I'm going to attach a couple more jump rings together because this project called for 6, which I think this is intended to be a sizable bracelet that you can customize and wear whatever size if you want it loose or tight. Just depends. But it's nice to have that option, isn't it? Okay, one more. And our bead, do you remember that little bauble that we had earlier? Is going to act as a weight for our chain that we just made. So we'll just attach that, make sure that our seams are closed all the way. Like, how good does that look? And now, whenever you go to clasp it, you can wear it to your bracelet length that you prefer. And that is it, my friends. That is a completed Memories of Tucson bracelet. Now I've got a matchy-matchy set of 2 that I will treasure, and, I'm just gonna flow through the rest of these steps because 'cause we've already done it. We went ahead and tested the length because we added some extra jump rings with our slider clasp, and, we checked for any open spaces and jump rings and added all the finishing touches to our design, and what a design this is. So I'm gonna just flip this back around to the picture and then back around to me. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining in. I enjoyed showing how to do this project for you guys. And again, check out the blog over on the website for the full written instructions, as well as the pattern for how to create that beautiful cactus band. You'll definitely need it if you want to make a exact replica of it. And then you can also check out the PDF pattern, become a free member, it's free to join. So become a member, it's free. And you can actually access the downloadable numeric pattern for the entire project, in fact, and many, many others, because the library of tutorials is growing. Lastly, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy the content and want to see more. And with that, you guys, I just want to say happy week that you're having. And I'm excited for my shopping extravaganza coming up. And I hope to see you back here on the Silver Silk channel. And you can catch more inspiration over on the Silver Silk Silkies Facebook group. But until next time, keep it fun and creative and keep it Silver Silk. All right. Bye, guys.